You know that feeling, right? You look at your bank account and there's a number there that actually makes you feel different. For me, that number was $20,000. Not millions, not life-changing wealth, but $20,000 that I actually built from nothing, and it changed everything about how I think about money. Here's the thing though, it wasn't the money itself that changed my life. It was the habits I developed to get there. And the really wild part? Those habits are actually worth way more than the $20,000 ever was. Because I'm going to tell you exactly which habits still work today, why they work, and more importantly, why you're probably not doing them. My name is Mamoon, and I spend way too much time thinking about money psychology. Not investing, not stock trading. I'm talking about why we make the decisions we make with our money and how the richest people in the world think completely differently than everyone else. If you're someone who feels like you're making decent money but somehow you're still broke at the end of the month, if you've tried budgets that didn't stick, or if you've ever wondered why your friends seem to build wealth while you're stuck on a hamster wheel, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't theory, it's what actually works in the real world, and it costs you absolutely nothing to implement. Here's what most people don't realize about building wealth, and this is going to sound weird, but you don't actually need to make more money.
Look at this.
I know that
chart.
sounds insane, but stick with me.
All my friends are getting rich.
According to a
while I'm
2023
stuck
Federal
on
Reserve
this
study,
hamster wheel.
approximately 56% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency with cash. Let me read that to you again. More than half of Americans don't have $400. But here's what's really interesting. The median household income in America is around $73,000. So we have people making decent money and they're still completely broke. Now you might be thinking, Mamoon, obviously they're not making enough money. But that's exactly the trap. That's exactly the thinking that keeps people poor, because it means you're always waiting for that raise, that promotion, that side hustle to kick in before you start managing your money properly. The real issue is psychological. It's about perception. When I hit that first $20,000, I wasn't making six figures. I was making around $38,000 a year, before taxes. So when I got my paycheck, roughly $2,400 hit my account. And everyone around me was saying the exact same thing. Man, you can't build wealth on that. So here's the thing. They weren't wrong about the math, but they were completely wrong about what was actually possible. The difference between me and literally everyone else in my income bracket came down to one thing. I understood the psychology of money differently. Not because I'm smarter, not because I had some special advantage, but because I was frustrated enough to actually question my assumptions. See, most people have this mental model that says income minus expenses equals savings. It looks like this. You make money, you spend money, and whatever's left over is savings. You're sitting around waiting for your expenses to magically go down, or waiting for your income to magically go up, so that maybe, possibly, you'll have something left over. But the richest people I've studied, the wealthiest people in the world, they flip that equation completely. They think income minus savings equals expenses. It's not a small change. It's a fundamental rewiring of how they approach money. Here's what that means in real life. Let's say you make $38,000 a year, which breaks down to about $2,400 a month after taxes. Most people do this. They wait until the end of the month to see what's left. Most months, it's close to zero. The system I used did this instead. I decided that $500 would get saved before I spent anything else, before I even saw it. Now you might be thinking, Mamoon, I can't save $500. I'm barely getting by. But here's where psychology comes in, because you actually can. You just don't think you can. And I can prove it to you. Think about the last time your employer made a mistake on your paycheck and you got an extra $500. What did you do? You found $500 to spend, right? The money materialized. You didn't even realize it was gone. The thing is, your brain is incredibly adaptable. It adjusts to whatever money is available. So if $500 doesn't exist in your account, your brain finds a way to spend the money that does exist. This is the psychological shift that nobody talks about, but it's everything. By forcing myself to save first, I wasn't becoming more disciplined. I wasn't white-knuckling my way through deprivation. I was literally making my brain adjust to a new financial reality. In my first year doing this, I saved $6,000. $6,000. on $38,000 a year. Most financial experts would tell you that's not enough. But here's where it gets really interesting, because that's not where the wealth building actually started. That $6,000 was just the catalyst. The second habit that changed everything for me was obsessive tracking. And I mean obsessive. I know that sounds boring. I know everyone tells you to track your spending and nobody actually does it. But this isn't about creating a spreadsheet to feel guilty. It's about something completely different. When I started tracking every single dollar, something unexpected happened in my brain. It was like I'd installed a real-time feedback system. I could see exactly where my money was going, and more importantly, I could see the psychological patterns behind those decisions. Let me give you a concrete example. I noticed that every Friday night, I was spending about $40 going out with friends. Nothing outrageous, just casual hangouts. But here's the thing. When I saw that number on my tracking system week after week, I realized something. $40 a week doesn't sound like much, but that's $2,080 a year. Over 5 years, that's over $10,000. Just gone. Just poof. But I didn't cut it out completely. That's not what I did. Instead, I made one small adjustment. I still went out, but I changed the pattern. Instead of going out every Friday and spending $40, I started going out twice a month, but spending $40 both times. Same annual expense, but it fundamentally changed my relationship with the activity. It made it feel less casual and more intentional. Now, most people when they hear that story think, okay, so he saved a few $1,000s. But that's not what happened. Because of that one change, I had a $10,000 reallocation in my first 2 years. $10,000. And that money went into my savings account. Now, here's where compound interest enters the picture, and this is where it gets really interesting. That $10,000 I saved over 2 years, sitting in a high-yield savings account earning roughly 4 to 5% annually, has now turned into approximately $14,200. And that was just from tracking one spending category. But the real magic wasn't the interest. The real magic was that tracking forced me to make a choice. Every single day, I was aware of my money. I wasn't letting my financial life happen to me, like most people do. I was actively directing it. Research from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who track their spending reduce their expenses by an average of 12 to 21%. And here's the thing, they don't do this through massive lifestyle cuts. They do this through micro decisions, small changes to patterns, awareness, just pure awareness. When you know that your coffee habit is costing you $1,200 a year because you're tracking it daily, you make a different choice than when you tell yourself, I spend a few bucks on coffee occasionally. That second version is how your brain naturally thinks about it. It's called the abstraction effect, and it's why people are terrible at understanding where their money goes. I started using a simple system. Every evening, I'd spend 4 minutes logging my transactions into a spreadsheet. I know that sounds tedious. I know you might be thinking, I don't have time for that. But here's the thing. You have time for scrolling social media for 30 minutes. You have time for watching Netflix for 2 hours. What we mean when we say, I don't have time, is really, I don't think this is a priority. And that's the core belief that keeps people poor. Those 4 minutes a day created a massive shift. Because by day 3 of tracking, I started making different purchasing decisions before I even spent the money. My brain said, I know this is going to show up in the spreadsheet tomorrow, and I'm going to see it. So I just didn't spend it. That's not willpower, that's not discipline. That's just changed psychology. That's your brain working with the system instead of against it. Now here's where most people go wrong, and this is the really important part. After about 6 months of saving and tracking, they start thinking about investing. They think, okay, I have a few $1,000s. Now I need to make this money grow faster. I need to get into the stock market or cryptocurrency or real estate or some business venture. And I'm telling you right now, that's the moment that destroys most people's wealth building journey. Look, I almost fell into this trap myself. I had saved about $10,000. This was about 18 months in, and I started researching day trading. I was reading about guys making 10% returns per month, and I thought, why am I just leaving this money in a savings account, earning barely any interest? So I read 3 books on technical analysis, opened a brokerage account, and felt ready. By the way, that whole research phase, 2 weeks. That's how long I studied before I decided I was ready to invest my savings. 2 weeks. I lost $1,200 in 3 weeks. Not catastrophically, I know some people lose their entire account, but it was enough to shake me, and it taught me something that changed my entire approach to wealth building. The difference between wealth building and wealth speculation. Here's the distinction that nobody makes clearly. Wealth building is boring. It's predictable. It's compounding small advantages over an extended period of time. Wealth speculation is exciting. It's the possibility of getting rich quick, and our brains are hardwired to prefer the exciting option. According to research from Bar Inc., the average investor underperforms the overall stock market by about 4 to 6% annually because they're trying to time the market, chasing hot stocks, and generally making emotional decisions. So while the overall market returns roughly 9 to 10% per year, the average person.
But the thing that actually accelerated my wealth building wasn't the investment returns. It wasn't the compound interest. It was something that happened around year 2 of this system. And this is a really interesting part. Because I was automatically saving $400 monthly, because I was tracking everything, because I had built this discipline muscle, when an opportunity came up, I was ready. I was in a position to take it. In year 3, my workplace offered a professional development course that cost $2,000. It would train me in a new skill that could potentially bump up my income. And the old version of me, the broke version, would have said, I can't afford $2,000. The me with the discipline system said, I've got this. I used savings from the automatic investment account. I took that course, and within 6 months, I was promoted. My salary went from $38,000 to $45,000. That's $7,000 more per year, which is about $400 additional per month. Here's where most people think that's great news, and they increase their spending. They get the raise, and they think, great, I've got an extra $400. Now I can afford that nicer apartment, or the newer car, or more frequent dinners out. But because I had built the psychological muscle of thinking in terms of income minus savings equals expenses, I didn't increase my expenses. I increased my savings. That additional $400 went straight into the investment account. This is the moment where wealth building accelerates. Not because you're suddenly earning more, but because you've built the discipline to keep your expenses flat, even as your income grows. It's called lifestyle inflation prevention, and it's probably the single most important habit for long-term wealth building. Now let me tell you about the habit that most people never develop, and it's probably the most important one. It's the psychology of knowing when you have enough. This might sound weird coming from someone who talks about building wealth and saving money, but here's the thing I realized around that $20,000 mark. If you're constantly thinking about how much more you need, you've already lost. You're permanently in a scarcity mindset, even though you actually have enough. Let me explain what I mean. Around the time my savings account hit $20,000, I had a moment of clarity. I was thinking about how I needed to get to $50,000, then $100,000, then $500,000. I was essentially telling myself, I'll be happy when. And I realized I was never going to get there. That goalpost would just keep moving. Research by psychologists Kahneman and Deaton found that once people's basic needs are met and they have roughly $75,000 in annual income, additional income only marginally increases happiness. Beyond that point, you're not buying more happiness. You're just buying more stuff and more stress that comes with maintaining it. But here's the thing that's even more interesting. Most people never actually reach a point where they feel like they have enough. It doesn't matter if they make $50,000 or $500,000. They're always stressed about money. Why? Because they've never built the psychological anchor that says, this is enough. This is my baseline. This is what success looks like. For me, that anchor was $20,000. I know that sounds specific and arbitrary, but it wasn't. I chose that number deliberately, and here's the math behind it. If I maintained my savings rate and kept my job, I could build to $20,000 in my first 2 years. That felt attainable. That felt like I could actually see it and touch it and feel accomplished when I got there. But more importantly than the number itself, reaching that $20,000 forced me to ask myself a critical question. Now what? And when I asked that question, I realized something. I didn't actually need more money. What I needed was security. And here's the distinction that changes everything. Security and wealth are not the same thing. Security is knowing you can cover a month of expenses if something goes wrong. It's knowing you don't have to stress about the $500 car repair. It's knowing you can take a weekend trip without completely devastating your finances. I calculated that I needed about $4,000 to cover 3 months of my basic living expenses. That was my security number. Once I hit that, I stopped worrying about money in a fundamental way. Not because I was rich, not because I had unlimited resources, but because I had built a buffer between me and financial catastrophe. Now, with that $4,000 security buffer in place, I could start thinking about actual wealth building differently. Because I wasn't building from a place of fear anymore. I was building from a place of abundance, even though I didn't have much money. This is the psychological shift that separates people who build wealth and people who don't. Most people are always operating from scarcity. They're always afraid. They're always thinking about what they don't have. The wealthy people I've studied, they operate from a place of knowing they can handle uncertainty. That changes how you make decisions. Once I had that security in place, I increased my savings rate to $600 a month instead of $400. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. I didn't do this because I was forcing myself or punishing myself. I did it because I no longer needed that extra $200 for security. The money was just sitting there, so it made sense to redirect it. But I could have kept it and spent it freely, and I would have been fine. That's the difference. I was choosing to save, not feeling like I had to. This psychology, this sense of I'm choosing this because it makes sense, rather than I'm choosing this because I have to, is what makes the system sustainable. Because when you're fighting yourself, when you're denying yourself, eventually you break, you give up, you go back to your old habits. But when you're working with yourself, when you're making choices that actually feel good, that's when real change happens. So let me sum up the habits that got me to $20,000, because these are the ones that still work today, and these are the ones you can implement immediately without making massive changes to your life. First habit, save first, spend later. Not the other way around. The psychological difference is massive. You're not restricting yourself. You're not denying yourself. You're reorganizing your priorities so that building your future comes before consuming in the present. Second habit, track everything. Not to punish yourself, not to feel guilty, but to install that real-time feedback system that changes how your brain makes decisions. Your brain doesn't respond well to vague goals. It responds to concrete information. Third habit, stop trying to beat the system. Stop trying to get rich quick. Stop chasing the next hot investment or opportunity. Set up boring, automatic investing in broad-based index funds and then leave it alone. The magic isn't in finding the perfect investment. The magic is in consistency and time. Fourth habit, prevent lifestyle inflation. When your income goes up, don't immediately increase your spending. Increase your savings first. This is where most people give up their wealth-building potential without even realizing it. Fifth habit, define your enough number. Do the math. Figure out what security looks like for you. Once you have that, you stop making desperate financial decisions. These 5 habits are worth far more than the $20,000 ever was, because the $20,000 was a result of these habits. The $20,000 is just the scoreboard, but the habits are what create the wins. Look, I'm not telling you this because I'm some financial genius or because I got lucky. I'm telling you this because I was frustrated. I was frustrated watching people make good money and stay broke. I was frustrated with financial advice that sounded good but didn't actually work. I was frustrated with my own situation, so I decided to actually study how wealthy people think differently. And what I found was that it's not complicated. It's not about making six figures or inheriting money or finding the perfect investment. It's about understanding the psychology of money and then building simple systems that work with that psychology, not against it. You can start this week. You don't need permission. You don't need more money. You need clarity and systems. You need to understand that your brain will adapt to whatever financial reality you create for it. So here's what I want you to do. Set up one automatic transfer for next Friday. Pick any amount, even $50. Just set it up and then pay attention to how your brain adapts. Watch how your spending patterns change. See what becomes possible when you're not waiting for motivation or discipline. You're just working with your psychology instead of against it. And if this video helped you understand how money actually works, if it gave you some clarity or some hope that you can actually build something, please hit that subscribe button and drop a thumbs up, because that helps the algorithm show this to other people who are stuck in the same place you were. The wealth building journey isn't about being special. It's about being consistent. And that's something everyone can do. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.